Hello and welcome to No Huddle Necessary. I'm your host, Jeff Barnes, here with the arguments that make points, and the winner gets FaceTime at the end. All right, three panelists today from our Nuts and Bolts staff. Of course, Monte Perez of the Full Monty Show, fellow draft scout Bill Carroll, and of course, Keith Richards, the man with the most famous name on the staff. All right, so we're going to have four topics we're going to debate today. Each member is going to get 2 minutes to make his argument. At the end of 2 minutes, if they're not done, I'm going to shut you down. So let's have at it first. So we're going to get ready for our first quarter. And today, I'd say, forgive me as I'm a little off, but so our first quarter question. Of course, today we had the end of franchise tag signing. We had the big deal with Pat Mahomes last week. Where does Pat Mahomes' deal leave Dak Prescott and Deshaun Watson? So first up, let's go to Monty to answer that question.
Okay, well, first off, before we get into Dak Prescott, there's certain philosophies that I live by. And one of them is when people are dating, whether it's your job, your friends, your family, never make someone a priority when they make you their option. So let's talk about Dak Prescott, right? Do the Dallas Cowboys really want Dak Prescott as their quarterback? My answer is no, and here's why. The Eagles signed Carson Wentz to a 4-year, $128 million contract. The 49ers signed Jimmy Garoppolo to a 5-year, $137 million contract. Russell Wilson, when there was just a rumor that he may go to New York, they signed him to a 4-year, $140 million contract. Here's what Dallas is saying. Mike McCarthy had Aaron Rodgers, and now he's going to Dak Prescott. And before people get on me on Twitter and social media and say Dak Prescott had the third best record over the last few years behind Tom Brady, who was 47-13, Russell Wilson 40-23-1. Here's the truth about Dak Prescott. 13-3 against the Washington Redskins and New York Giants. 30 TDs, 4 interceptions. Against everyone else, 27-21. Jerry Jones is a great businessman, but he showed you his cards when he signed Ezekiel Elliott. He showed you his cards when he signed Amari Cooper. He showed you his card when he signed their linebacker. Jerry Jones is saying to the entire world and to Dak Prescott, show me what you got now that we have Mike McCarthy, now that we drafted CeeDee Lamb. This is a great move for Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboy organization, but they don't really want Dak Prescott because if they did, they would have signed him like the 49ers did, like the Eagles have done. Now with Deshaun Watson, it's a no-brainer. They traded their number one wide receiver. They got rid of him and Hopkins. They let him go to Arizona because they're making moves for him. Deshaun Watson, over the last 3 years, has had the 30th, the 28th, and 26th ranked offensive line. They're going to rebuild that line, and they're going to pay him. That's why they got rid of the wide receiver. But don't tell me, Dallas Cowboy fans, that Jerry Jones and Dak Prescott deserves this because they signed everyone else besides him. So the people in the building don't believe in Dak Prescott, even though the Dallas...
And your time is up, Monty. Great argument. All right, let's move on to Keith. What do you got to say about this?
I think I mostly agree with Monty. I think Dak definitely deserves the chance to prove that he deserves that money. The thing with Dak is there's times when he looks like he could be one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league and times where he looks like he is one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. The problem with that is it's hard to say, is that Dak or was it that god-awful coach Jason Garrett that he played with for his first few seasons in the league? And we don't know that because all he's done is play with Jason Garrett. I mean, we get a chance with Mike McCarthy to see if he actually is a good player and was not being coached well, or if he just can't be coached and is not going to progress to any further than what he is now. I personally, I hate to admit it. I really, really, really hate to admit it. I agree that Jerry should not have paid him that money just yet. But if he goes out, leads them to the playoffs, has them as a Super Bowl contender this season, and Jerry still refuses to pay him, then that becomes a Jerry Jones problem. Jerry Jones is in the right now, but I don't think he'll be by season's end if Dak is who I think he is.
And what about Deshaun?
Deshaun, the problem with the quarterback market is that if you want your starting quarterback, you're gonna have to overpay for him. That's the sad truth. I mean, I don't think Dak or Deshaun is worth anywhere near what Pat Mahomes got, but when Pat Mahomes set that level, you're gonna have to start paying over $25-30 million a year if you want that as your starting quarterback. Would I pay that much for Dak or Deshaun? Probably not, but that's what the NFL quarterback market is.
All right. Mr. Bill.
Well, I think these are two sort of separate questions. So I'll deal with the Dak side of it first, and it's clear that he's going to follow the path laid by his play cousin, Kirk, right? Where it's going to be a, franchise until finally he can work his way out of there. Unless, of course, we said something happens where they're essentially back to a corner where they have to give him a big deal. And let's not forget, on the Dak side, they've said they didn't want to sign a really long-term deal. The Cowboys tried to sign him. They were putting out an offer sheet for a long-term deal previously, but it was too long. And Dak didn't want to be sort of pulled away from the party while the money kept going up and up and up. So I think he's okay with, this guy, like Cousins, was a fourth-round draft pick, played on a very small contract initially. I think he's going to bet on himself, and I think he is going to bet on himself. And, of course, if he wins, he's going to win big. He's going to hit the Powerball. So he has a chance to basically Flacco himself if indeed he does take them to the Super Bowl. And at that point, you can't let a Super Bowl quarterback walk no matter how much you end up having to overpay. So this is going to be one of those kind of situations where we're going to see, it may come up snake eyes. Maybe he gets hurt. Maybe he plays badly. But if he hits, he's going to hit big. Now, for comedy purposes, regarding Deshaun Watson, I should probably make some joke about Bill O'Brien flipping him to like Tampa Bay for O.J. Howard and a conditional third-round draft pick or something. But to treat it somewhat seriously, they have to keep Deshaun Watson. Right? You can't let him get away under any circumstance because then what are you going to do? That team is built in such a way that if Deshaun Watson doesn't go out and play like a top 3 or 4 quarterback, that's a 4-12, 5-11 kind of team you're looking at. They have a good but not amazing defense and not much else to show for it. So Bill O'Brien, the GM, has been putting Bill O'Brien, the coach, on the hot seat. And we're going to have to see how Bill O'Brien, the GM, and Bill O'Brien, the coach, are going to work on this thing and get it better. Because right now, as Monty mentioned, their offensive line has not been hitting on much. And we can assume it's going to get better, but do we know it's going to be better? We don't know it's going to be better, but if it doesn't get better soon, they're going to have a problem. So
all right, that's your time, Bill. I have to cut you off. But all right, so here's a bonus question for all you. I'm going to bring all your mics back on. To wrap up one more extra point for you guys. What does this mean in a case where who gets paid first? Both of these guys you're looking at didn't get their deals done. Who gets paid first?
Well, here's what I do. If I am these quarterbacks right now, you're in a very precarious situation here because they're saying that the NFL each team is going to lose $70 million this year because it doesn't look like the fans will be in attendance. So the salary cap next year, Dak may have the right strategy here because if he gets a franchise tag, then gets another franchise tag, when the COVID goes away, God willing, and fans come back in 2 years, the cap will go up, the television contract will go up. He will look like the smartest business. He'll make Kirk Cousins look like a poor man because Kirk Cousins did the same thing. So if I'm Deshaun Watson, I wait it out for 2 reasons. One, we don't know the status of Bill O'Brien. He's on the hot seat. Like we said, he hasn't been a good general manager. He's been a pretty good coach. So I waited out because if he wants out of Houston, he's going to be the highest paid free agent since what, Peyton Manning? So I look for both of them to play the year out and see what happens.
Keith.
The Bill O'Brien thing really complicates it just because, I mean, Dak for sure, he has a good coach in Mike McCarthy. So he can afford to wait it out for 2 seasons and either stay in Dallas or go somewhere else. Deshaun Watson can't do that because if Bill O'Brien leaves, he doesn't know who's coming in. He doesn't know who's going to agree with that person. At that point, he's either going to be stuck with a coach that he doesn't like, or I have the opportunity to play with a coach that he does. So I think at the end of the day, Deshaun Watson's going to sign first, and it's not going to be in Houston.
All right. Bill.
Yeah, well, I think Deshaun Watson will sign first for a couple reasons. One is I think he's going to get probably the more favorable deal, quite frankly, and because he's it. I just said before, he's the show. He's the shooting match. He's, when you show people the facilities, it's like, well, here's the locker rooms, here's the big screens, here's the stadium, here's Deshaun Watson. Oh, and I think that might be J.J. Watt driving down the road, but that's it. Like, what are you showing people when you show people the Texans? It's about Deshaun Watson. You have to sign Deshaun Watson.
Can I just add one more comment? Everyone's killing Bill O'Brien, and rightly so. But let's remember, guys, he's won 4 out of the last 5 division titles. So he's not winning playoff games, but he's won 4 out of the last 5 division titles.
Now, just imagine if he wasn't trying to cut his own throat as a GM when he beat
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So as we're going to move on to the next question, second quarter question, and let's jump to the college side. Will we even have a college football season? All right, Monty, start us off.
Okay, so here's the problem with the college football season. There are several problems, and let me just explain to you, there is no bigger college football fan than I am. My Saturday day is get up, go work out, go to Trader Joe's, come home at 11, college football game day, and I watch football all day Saturday. I have no life. I will admit it. But that's my Saturday. But here's the problem, guys. First of all, where do they love college football the most? The SEC. It's a different animal. But 25% of coronavirus cases over the last 5 days in the entire world have come from the Southeast and the Southwest. So look at the states right now where college football dominates. Texas, hotspot. Florida, hotspot. Alabama, hotspot. Mississippi, hotspot. Now they're trying to do something, and this hasn't really been talked about, but Alabama did this. Clemson did this. Ohio State has done this. Texas, Tom Herman, to his credit, hasn't done this. But Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and LSU, they all had practices because they wanted their players to almost be exposed by this. So when the season comes, they don't miss out. They won't get the coronavirus. And here's what the problem. You're looking at if college kids are on campus and tailgating. We've all been to tailgating parties. We were at the Alabama Michigan game that was here in Florida, and it was wall-to-wall people. So how are you going to stop this virus if in the Southeast Conference, where they live for football, they want it so badly? I think every team, every conference is going to shut it down midway through the season. I think we start a season, but we don't have it. And it's so unfortunate because the SEC and the entire nation wants to see college football, but there's no commissioner in college football, just like we don't have a man in the White House who's organizing the coronavirus. It's up to each governors, and it's going to be up to each league commissioners, and that is just not good enough.
Good job. All right. Let's go to Keith.
Should there be college football this season? No. Will there be college football this season? Yes. As the great philosophers of Wu-Tang Clan once said, that rules everything around me. And if the NCAA is about anything, they are about their money. So if they can get 4 games in, they would get 4 games. If they can get 2 games, they'll get 2 games. They would love to get the whole season in. But the problem is there's only so far they can push these unpaid amateur athletes before they're going to start their revolt. And it sucks for the players who are seniors who may not be able to showcase their talents for NFL teams with just basically doing a combine or a pro day. But if the situation had been handled better, I think they could have had a college football season. Situation has been handled poorly from the top all the way down to the bottom. And because of that, they're going to try their hardest to get all of that season in, but it's just not going to happen. These players are already on their butts about their money, getting their share of the money. Do you think they're going to play for you when they're putting their lives, in some cases, in danger and they're still not getting paid? Absolutely not. So once it blows up again, the season's going to get shut down, but they're going to squeeze every dime out of this season that they can before it happens.
All right. What about you, Bill?
The college football season will be like me. It will be short and it will be weird. The fact is that, as was mentioned, as the philosophers, Wu-Tang Clan mentioned, it's true that this is, if ever you were somehow confused about how our country works, watch what's about to happen. People will say all the right things about wanting to protect these young people and all the right things about what matters and all that other stuff, and then money. And money will end up being what makes the decisions about all the things that end up happening. I think you'll see some attempts to push the season back. I think you'll see, no fans in the stands. I think you'll see, conference only. They're going to try the classic throw everything at the wall and see what sticks system until finally but yes, as was mentioned, they're going to eventually, the decision will be made for them if things go as badly as they might. I mean, like everyone else here, I'm praying that even though these people have blown it as badly as it can be blown, maybe somehow, miraculously, it all works out and they manage to have most of a season. But that's highly unlikely. What's more likely is a bunch of bad things happen, unfortunately, and eventually it's taken out of the hands of the money grubbers, and they're forced to do the right thing, much against their own wishes.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. I think the one thing we've seen, everybody makes the talk about amateurism, should the guys get paid. We're seeing that they're employees of the university right now, because no way, only other person that does that to you that says, we need you to come here now so we can make money is your job. And right now, that's exactly what these college athletes are getting. Let's move on.
I was going to say one more quick thing. The data shows that these college athletes should be fine if they get coronavirus, but a lot of these coaches are over 50. So what happens if one of these coaches gets it? He's in the hospital, his wife gets it, his kids gets it. That's what really concerns me. A lot of these coaches are over 50 years old, and that is a dangerous place to be when COVID is running rampant.
Well, one quick step beyond that. A lot of the people who are in there picking up people's mouthpieces and putting together people's equipment and picking up the used tape, those are people who are very often not kids, even older than the coaches sometimes, and not getting $1 million contracts like the coaches.
How about the guys who pour the water into their mouths?
Yeah.
The water bottle.
That's what I'm saying. I'm worried about equipment managers. I'm worried about people who clean up after games.
Well, moving on to the third quarter. All right. So, with all of the things that are going on racially, we've had the exact opposite situation happen in Philadelphia. Deshaun Jackson comes out with some very controversial comments, makes a big apology. The question is, are you guys buying that apology? And we're going to reverse the order this time. So this time, Bill's going to start us off.
Look, I love spending time in black barbershops, listening to people say crazy things as much as the next hour. But what I know that apparently Deshaun Jackson does not know is that you don't go saying those things to other people. There's a lot of crazy stuff that's out there if you like to hear crazy things said. And let's be very clear about Deshaun Jackson. He is not the world's greatest judge of things to do or not to do. I'll put it that way. I know people who've known this young man since he was in his teens, and he's an interesting person. I will say that much. And so he's around a lot of different kinds of people. Those who remember his draft process, that was one of the things that he was a second rounder, at least in part because there was some concerns about his quote unquote affiliations. And I don't think a lot of that stuff was really true, but once again, guilt by association. But he's been around a lot of different kinds of people. He's listened to people say all kinds of crazy things. But I'm willing to bet, I will bet everything I own that in his own personal or professional circle, he has multiple Jewish people. And he likes all of them, probably. I'm willing to bet. There's this disconnect between this crazy stuff that he's heard people say, that he's repeating, and the actual experiences he's had with, I'm going to guess, several Jewish people in his own personal professional circle who either work with the Eagles or work for him, right? I mean, I don't want to go to the whole, God knows my heart cut argument, because, well, that's a bad argument to be hit. If you're saying that, you already lost. But the fact is that I don't think his actual feelings about Jewish people match the words.
All right. Monty, you're going to go in the middle this time.
So I'm not going to sit here and speak for an African-American athlete because I am not African-American. But I will say this. We have freedom of speech, but what you say matters. And what that means is if you say something asinine and stupid, you should be punished for it in a way where it's taking away games, fine, etc. Now, Philadelphia is in a very, very difficult situation because a few years ago, Riley Cooper was at a concert, and whether he was drunk or not, he said, "I will kill every N-word in this place." Riley Cooper wound up getting a contract extension from the Philadelphia Eagles, a wide receiver out of Florida. But here's what I don't understand, and here's where Deshaun Jackson is so tone deaf here. Now, growing up, I knew two things, as well as you guys did. Hitler and the Nazis were evil, and Russia was our enemy. Now, since 2016, you see all over social media that the Nazis are coming back. People are siding with Russia. I actually saw a shirt that said, "I would rather vote for Vladimir Putin than Democrats." So here's what I'm going to say. Right now, 70% of America, almost 70% of America is pro-Black Lives Matter. You can't get 70% of the people outside of Kansas City, Missouri to agree that Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL. So 70% of America agrees with Black Lives Matter, and then Deshaun Jackson says something so anti-Semitic, and I know this from basic schooling 101. When you quote Hitler, you lose all credibility. And this is my concern now. For the first time in my life, African Americans have a speaking voice. And white people, every other nation in the world is protesting for Black Lives Matter. They have the opportunity now to really be heard. And what Deshaun Jackson did is despicable. And if I'm the Philadelphia Eagles, I suspend him without pay, a minimum of 2 to 4 games. End of story. You have a platform now. Use it wisely.
All right, Keith.
I think Marty kind of hit the nail on the head there. Particularly when it comes to Black Lives Matter. We're at a point in our society where whether or not there's going to be any actual change or not, we have an opportunity for actual change in race relations in this country, particularly with blacks and whites. That's what it boils down to. What's disappointing to me as an African American is the people I see who agree with Deshaun Jackson, and a couple days ago, Nick Cannon also said something anti-Semitic, and it just puts me in the mood. Like, absolutely, we deserve justice for Breonna Taylor. We deserve justice for George Floyd, but you can't want or expect justice for your people if you're not willing to be respectful of other people. And that is something that I see as kind of a failure with African Americans. They want all the justice for themselves, but they don't want to be respectful of others at the same time. And that's not the case for every African American. I mean, it's mostly like, I think Bill said, barbershop talk. Things that are said in a barbershop are things that are said in a barbershop. Doesn't make it right, doesn't make it okay, is said in a barbershop. You have to know, especially when you have someone with as large of audiences as Deshaun Jackson and Nick Cannon, that you can't say certain things in public. I mean, whether or not they actually agree with it, that's a topic for another day. If they actually agree with what they're saying, then there's other talks that need to be had with them. But you just can't say it in public, especially in this time of racial tension, and you're so close to having that equality that people have been fighting for not even decades, for almost centuries now. And you just go out and say something stupid like that, it just throws a whole monkey wrench and makes us go backwards when we've been fighting so hard to move forward.
Good arguments, gentlemen. Good arguments. And when we're talking about it, this is where we talk about that rare situation where now the shoe is on the other foot. Where for so long we've had it where the minorities have been at it because a Caucasian's been the one who said something insensitive. Now it's a minority saying something that's angering a different demographic. And it's one of those things where, yes, as a professional athlete, you can have your personal feelings. But guess what? Just like you get offended, you better be aware what you say, because at the other end of it, somebody else is going to be offended as well if you're out of line. So
I mean, we saw a perfect example of that within the same week. With let's look at the media personalities. You had Nick Cannon, and you had Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson's top writer got fired for saying racist, bigoted things, and Nick Cannon gets fired for saying something anti-Semitic. Every person I know was calling for Tucker Carlson to get taken off the air and for that writer to be fired. But when the shoe's on the other foot, they're saying they have no right to fire Nick Cannon because Breonna Taylor doesn't have justice, which makes no sense to me whatsoever. Breonna Taylor deserves justice, and Nick Cannon deserves to be fired. That's plain and simple.
So, do we all agree that that Deshaun Jackson should be suspended?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, listen, they didn't suspend Riley Cooper, and they should have, and they should have, and it didn't happen. So they didn't suspend him either. He got fined, and they're going to move forward with it. And honestly, there should have been a suspension for both players, and it didn't happen. So I guess the slap on the wrist was done for both players. They tried to play it as equal. Right? You got to slap. Let's move forward. And honestly, I don't think anybody was impressed with the punishment. I don't think anybody was impressed with the apology. So, you have it as what it is. Moving on to the fourth quarter, and we're actually moving pretty fast. So we may actually award an extra minute at the end of this show.
Overtime.
Yeah, so we're going to extend the argument. We're going to extend the arguments now. You're going to get, in the rap battles in 8 Mile, everybody got an extra minute for the championship round. We're going into the fourth quarter, so I'm going to extend you. We're going to double the time. We're going to go 4 minutes of time now for you guys to make your argument here. And for the fourth quarter, we touched on it earlier. Will there be fans in the stands week 1 for the NFL? Keith, start us off this time.
I got to go back to Wu-Tang. Cash rules everything around me. They are going to try to put fans in the stands for 1 week, 2 week, whatever it is. I mean, we already see kind of sports trying this. May not be the best example, but I can't remember if it's tonight or tomorrow night. NASCAR has their all-star race where they're putting 30,000 people in a 160,000 seat stadium. Can we do contract tracing to see if that works to try to social distance people that way? I believe they're going to try and say, well, there's no huge outbreak from this incident, so why can't we do it? And everyone's going to try to duplicate that. The problem is testing is not where it should be to be able to say where this virus is coming from when you're in those big crowds like that. Contract tracing is not where it should be. And like Monty said, these athletes are probably going to be fine. It's the referees, the coaches, the concession stand workers. And then they have to go back home to their families, which their children might be fine, but some of them have their parents living with them who could get the disease. Then you have to go to the grocery store. Then you have to tip your delivery driver. There's so many potential ways for the virus to spread when you're putting fans in the stand. There's so many ways for the rise to spread when you're just having players on the field, let alone putting fans in the stands. But because they see those dollar signs, they are going to try their hardest to put as many people stands in they can for as long as they can. And I do feel for the people who work concessions and stuff like that, because they're not making $5, $10, $20 million a year. They're just trying to get by. And they can't get by because they can't work right now. And I'm sure owners were trying to justify that by saying, well, we're just trying to get them to work, when they're all billionaires and could pay them regardless of whether they work or not. But whatever they can do to keep their bottom line increasing while keeping the game going as well.
All right. So, and it's going to apply to all of you guys, but right back at you with this. You've already had certain states tell teams, we don't want you right now, as of right now, to have anybody in the stadium other than personnel week 1. I think it's happened in Pennsylvania with Philly. I think it was when they started already telling them they do not want fans in the stands in Pennsylvania week 1. So between now and then, do you think that changes? How does that affect certain teams being given that edict saying, yes, you can have them, and certain teams, states saying, no, you can't?
I mean, it goes right back to the college football viewpoint of it. Teams in Pennsylvania, New York, California, they're not going to be fans in the stands. But is it going to happen in Missouri, Texas, those southern states? They're going to do their damnedest to try it. Besides whatever science says that says you shouldn't do it, they're going to try it just because they think they're right.
All right. Monty.
So, on a personal note, the only reason I don't want fans in the stadium is because I'm sick of seeing Fireman Ed, who is a Jet. Let me just explain about Fireman Ed for those of you who don't know. Fireman Ed has been the Jet leading cheerleader in the stands for over 2 decades, and he came up with the greatest cheer ever: Jets, 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 Jets. Can you get more boring when you're in the stadium and cheering that? I mean, just think about this. This guy has spent his whole life, his identity is a Jet fan who haven't won a Super Bowl since 1969. So that's why I don't want to see fans, because if I don't have to see Fireman Ed ever again, it would make me happy. But here's what I'm going to say. Again, going back to a personal story. The last time the Jets were in the playoffs, I was in a bar. I lived out in L.A., and I go to a sports bar, and I tell the bartender, I really hope the Jets beat the Indianapolis Colts with Peyton Manning, because my parents will come out if they win, and we'll be back here next year. So within 20 minutes, the bartender says, hey, we all got to root for the Jets. His parents will come here next week to watch if they make it to the AFC Championship game. And people came up to me because we were all drinking, high-fiving me like I was part of the team, like I was part of the owner. So here's the problem I have. Let's say the Baltimore Ravens said we're going to allow 14,000 fans in. Are you going to stop tailgating? Because tailgating, you know this, when you tailgate, you're cooking, you're talking, you meet friends that you've never seen before. There's no one's going to be wearing a mask if you're drinking and eating hamburgers, hot dogs, nachos, buffalo wings. I'm just going to keep naming food because I haven't eaten dinner yet. So I'm saying, and then what happens with the concession stands? For example, where do you see the biggest line other than the restroom? Where do you see the biggest line? People waiting to buy beer, people waiting to buy popcorn, hot dogs. So my thing is, if you're going to have all these fans there, even if it's 14,000 fans, you're going to have the concession stand, like Keith said, you're going to have the concessions come to you. But my concern is once people have alcohol in them, all their inhibitions go away. They'll take off their mask. They'll high five when they score a touchdown. When I was at that bar in California, I knew almost no one. By the end of that, I was like the mayor. We were all drinking, having a good time. No one cared about the Colts because they were in L.A. So my biggest concern is, look, I've watched the UFC. I know that's one-on-one. I didn't miss the fans. I watched Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson in a monsoon with Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. I loved it. I don't need fans to make it complete because I'm a sports guy. I just want to see what's on the court. Now, they started to do something which was pretty cool. They started to put sound into MLS. And when you look at basketball, when you look at football, everything is shot in a unique way where they show the field. The only problem I think people will have, no fans, will be Major League Baseball, because you're going to see how empty it is, because when someone gets up to bat and they show the pitcher, you see the background, you see the fans behind there. But with the NBA, the NHL, the NBA, you're focusing on the arena where they're playing. So I'm not going to miss fans, and I hope there is no fans, although like I said in the opening, they're talking that if they don't get fans in the stadium, they're going to lose $70 million. But we can all watch from home. We can all be safe. Why risk it? I'm not going to risk I always used to laugh at people who would get into fights because if I'm a Philadelphia Eagle fan and someone's a Giant fan and they're making fun of my Carson Wentz jersey, I'm going to fight them. Do you think Eli Manning or Carson Wentz are going to fight when they say, hey, Monty's an idiot? No. So to me, fan is fanatical, and this is a good way to reset, watch it in your home, and stay safe.
All right. And, since you mentioned the Jets, once again, the reason why there is no beer sold at night games at MetLife Stadium is because of the Jet fans. So exactly. if you didn't know that before, you know that now. All right, Bill. So, Bill, bring us home.
Okay, so I'm going to treat this as a two-part question. Should there be fans in the stands? No. Niet. Nein. Nay. Newt. That's Dutch, Spanish, English, French, Russian. I don't know any other languages. I'll learn some more. There should be no fans in the stands. But once again, as the philosophers and poets in the Wu-Tang Clan pointed out, they're going to probably try something. There'll be a pilot program or something. The problem with quote-unquote social distancing, right? When you say we're only going to sell X number of seats to whatever, are you also going to have people patrolling the stadium to make sure that people actually socially distance? Even if there's only 8,000 seats that you sell for the stadium, are you going to stop family members from clumping together? Or, as he said, when Monty says people meet each other in the bathroom line or whatever, and now they're new best friends, you're going to stop them from sitting next to each other. And when people do have to still clean up afterwards, right? No matter what. I don't care if there's 7 people in the stands, you have to clean up after them. And there still has to be security because 7 people can still get into fights. I mean, how many Raiders fans do you need to start a fight? 1, really. You don't need more than 2. 1 Raiders fan can start kicking their own ass. So you always will. You have all these extra variables, even when you have 1 fan in the stands. If you literally have 1 fan, and now you've got all the extra variables, all these extra people that have to worry about what that 1 person might or might not do. So they should not have fans in the stands. Now, like I said, will they try something? They'll probably explain it as some sort of, like I said, pilot program, or we're trying an experiment or whatever. Knowing that if it blows up in their faces, they didn't say, well, we were trying something. We didn't say we were going to have fans. We just wanted to see what happens. I want to cut to the end. Here's what happens. If you have people in stands, you're going to have a upsurge. You're going to have more people get sick. I think we've already seen how this works. Hey, what happened when Florida said, go ahead, spring breakers, come on down. Like, there's no way you can have people come together, even when you claim they're going to be socially distant. As Monty pointed out, 2 things happen. Herd mentality and then drinking. When people are around other people, they want to be with other people. Humans are social by nature. Hey, look, there's so-and-so. Hey, he's got a cool whatever. Hey, I've never seen that jersey before. Hey, guy, where'd you get that? People will start clumping together. Even if you only sell 100 seats, there'll be 100 people sitting close to each other. What are you doing? Why did you do this? So that's the first problem. And the second problem, once again, is just by bringing more people in, there's stuff's going to happen. And was pointed out, there's going to be people, if you have even 1 fan show up, right? Once you involve that 1 human being, they're going to tell their buddies, their whatevers, hey, man, I got the only seat. Well, you know what's going to happen. Be like, well, dude, how'd you get that one? There's going to be a whole chain of sort of unintended consequences once you say, yes, we're letting. And let's be honest. Pro football is a television show anyway. Can we be honest about this? Can we do that? Pro football, don't tell anybody, but it's really just a television show anyway. That's what it's a way to sell you trucks and beer. Okay, I'm sorry. I had to ruin it for everybody. But that's really what, like, jerky, trucks, and beer. That's really what pro football is. Oh, and now I guess like Rogaine, which I guess you guys don't need. But that's really what pro football has become. It's a way to sell you stuff, right? It's a television show. So you don't have to have fans in the stands. It's a TV show, people.
All right, real quick, important question. If the Rams blow, or no, not the Rams, if they blow a lead in the playoffs and there's no fans there to see it, then it happened.
The only thing I'll disagree with Bill is I am not a social human being. I thrive better when I'm by myself. So he says human beings are social. I'm the opposite of that.
Well, I'm going to tell you what.
The one fan off by yourself.
Well, I almost gave you an extra point where you talked about being social in a bathroom line because that immediately reminded me of Coming to America. Yeah, it is you! I am a loyal citizen of Zamunda. Yes. Oh man, that right
Great
there.
reference, by the way. Great reference.
Oh man. So we are down to our final whistle. Somebody gets the magic FaceTime, and I tell you what, it was really, really tight. But you know what? We're going full Monty today. Monte Perez steals the show. Oh, so
Wow.
Monte Perez, the floor is yours. 4 minutes of unadulterated FaceTime. Speak your mind.
So I just want to thank all the guests. You guys are absolutely hilarious. Great time. But I just want to say one thing that's really important. We all miss sports. We all love sports. Sports is a way to unite people. I'll give you a personal story. My dad never used to watch college football until I moved to Florida a few years ago. And I started watching it, and now my dad is obsessed with college football. We'll cook some wings. It's a great way to unite people. But what we're seeing now, and again, I don't want to talk politics, but what we're seeing now is a colossal failure in leadership. What the NBA is doing with the bubble is exactly right. I follow the Mets. I follow the Lakers. I follow the Dallas Mavericks. I follow a ton of sports teams, the New York Rangers. And their message is simple. Wear a mask. Wear a mask. There's been 137,000 Americans who've died. I know 4 people who've died from this virus. I know 12 people who've gotten sick for it. Thank goodness, out of the 8 that survived this, the 4 people who died, 8 of them, 2 of them only got really sick, but they didn't have to go to the hospital. So this affects everyone differently. But here's what I want to tell people who think this is a hoax or thinks this is, the NBA, the NFL. The NFL just said they're going to lose $70 million with this coronavirus in this season. They would not shut down their organizations for the god-darn flu, okay? This is not the flu. It is a serious virus, and it's the stupidity and the ignorance of certain people, especially the radical right. I live in Florida. I ride my bike, I wear a mask. I go to the store, I wear a mask. I wear a mask 8 hours a day in the pharmaceutical company that I work at, okay? I don't want to wear a mask. But you know what I don't want? I don't want to get my parents sick. I don't want to get my brother sick. I don't want to get my friends sick. So even when I eat dinner with my parents on Friday nights, we used to go out to dinner every Friday night. What we do now is we have dinner, we order food, we social distance. The NFL, watch what happens in the bubble. Watch what happens in the NFL, because I've said this from day one. It doesn't matter what you think about this virus. Watch what the sports teams do, okay? It's going to be real interesting to see if the bubble stays clean. If it does, there's hope for this country, because the NBA, the NHL, Major League Baseball, and the NFL are doing so much more than our leadership here in Florida is doing. Part of the reason why they're doing this is because they want people to get back to work. But what's the end game here? You send them back to work, they get sick, the economy suffers. The short-term thinking of the man in the White House and the governor here in Florida is pathetic. They should be charged with crimes against humanity. They should be charged with reckless endangerment. 137,000 people have died. The governor of Oklahoma went to Trump's rally in Tulsa without a mask, and now he has the coronavirus. So my message to everyone is follow what the sports leagues are telling you, because they are losing millions of dollars, if not billions, every week. Follow them, wear a mask, social distance. If we all do that for a month, we can beat this thing. And the ultimate goal is for everyone, not one more person to die, not one more person to get sick, not one more person to lose their job. The ultimate goal is to everyone be safe and we get our sports back, because sports is the very definition of American lifestyle. We gather, black, white, doesn't matter who you are. I've made a tremendous amount of friends from my writing and doing my shows, and I don't know these people. And I'm glad everyone here is on the same page saying that fans should not be there. This is the classic thing, and I'll end with this. The reason most people fail instead of succeed is they crave what they want. They go for what they want now at the moment instead of what they want long term. I used to be a personal trainer, and people would tell me, I want to lose 30 pounds. I want to quit smoking. I want to quit drinking. I'm like, screw that. Just come start working out. And they would come, and then one guy, I'll never forget it, he lost about 200 pounds when I was training him. He said to me after like 2 months, he goes, I was going to go out with my friends and drink beer and have wings, but I didn't because I knew I had to work out. And I said, see, that's why I'm not telling you to stop drinking. So once you do one thing, stop focusing on you can't go to the bar. I had someone say, today at work, oh, my kid wants to go out so bad for Halloween. I said, wear a damn mask and we'll get there. Take all the necessary steps. If you want to run a marathon, you don't run 25 miles. You run a few blocks a day, a few miles a day. Wear a mask, social distance. If you don't see someone wearing a mask, stay away from them.
All right. And that pretty much wraps it up for us. What can I say? This virus also affected me as well. Before we sign off, I want to mention a friend of mine that just recently passed from from complications from the coronavirus. A friend of mine that I played ball with for a few years. I also had the pleasure of coaching him. Leaves behind a wife and 4 kids. Conrad Coleman, I miss you. On that note, thank you for tuning in to the first episode of No Huddle Necessary. Thank you, Monte Perez. Thank you, Bill Carroll. Thank you, Keith Richards. Well, got to get you guys back on here again next week. Whole new set of panelists. So,
hey, Bill, you got to shave your head next time. You're not looking good.
Well, next time I will. Someone sent me a memo.
Go Packers.
It's always shaved. It's always shaved. But on that note, once again, tune in next week, same time, 9 p.m. Eastern, on Twitter and on YouTube for No Huddle Necessary. This is Jeff Barnes signing off. Have a good night.
Good night. Jeff, what are you doing the 24th?